Hello everyone, and welcome to the final episode of Season 3 for Sully's Open Conversation. We're in the beautiful Richmond Park, and I am joined here today with Ben. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks for having me, George.
Thank you very much for coming on. So me and Ben met probably about 3 or 4 months ago, I'd say, maybe a little bit longer. But I'll let Ben introduce himself. So yeah, go ahead.
I'm Ben. I'm a mental health campaigner. I started in the mental health world, sadly, after I lost my brother to suicide in 2018, almost 6 years ago. And I realised quite quickly that actually, first of all, Sam was not alone in struggling. He was 15 years old. We were both at school. I started speaking to people at school and realised that practically everyone I knew had something they weren't telling anyone, and had something going on. Had friends tell me they'd attempted suicide. Had all sorts that was going on that I had no idea about. And so I really wanted to create or make a change within schools, and started trying to bring that conversation to life within my friends on a project called Walk to Talk, which is basically just this big charity walk that we did with friends from school. And then I started doing more policy work. So I started a petition for mental health first aid to be compulsory part of teacher training, which did really well, got loads of signatures, ended up in Downing Street, and still waiting on that to change. But for me, it's just I'm a mental health campaigner. I focus mainly on young people, and I do a lot of work as well for corporates and employee mental health as well. So mental health, anything people want help with, like, we're there. Let's get it front and center. But mainly it's getting those conversations out there, having the difficult conversations, and just sparking that conversation for policy change, and getting better prevention, better education, and better support for people that are struggling.
Amazing stuff, amazing. And yeah, it's just an incredible thing to do out of such a horrible and difficult experience, to then change and turn that into something really positive. So I think I've followed you on Instagram and stuff for a few years, and have followed. Yeah. It was quite an interesting, to then actually meet you and see you, and now get to know you is actually quite special and quite cool. So yeah, thank you very much, Ben. One other thing that we like to do to start the show is if you could tell us or name something, one positive thing that you have heard, seen, or done recently.
It's such a difficult question, because I'm going to tell you why it's difficult, because I think so much in this space. I talk about mental health and how you're meant to look after yourself all the time. Tomorrow I've got a talk for Mental Health Awareness Day, and I'm like, mental health this and do this. And I think it's so easy to be a sort of do as I say, not as I do, and sort of forget to do those things myself. And I do, and I have moments where I'm like, you need to actually do something here. Beyond the surface level stuff, like I really like running for my mental health. I've actually started a course of EMDR therapy, and I have had my last session on Friday last week, and it has taken this incredibly excruciatingly awful traumatic experience and turned into something that is a nasty, not a very nice memory, but something that doesn't carry the weight of emotion and the sting of emotion with it. So yeah, something I've done for myself that's been good has been finishing that
EMDR,
intense, exhausting, very, very intrusive therapy. But it's been incredible, absolutely incredible. And I feel very proud of myself for having got through that, because I think for a lot of years I told myself, and this is quite ironic given what I do for a living, but told myself that I was handling it on my own. And I just peeled back that extra layer of the onion, Shrek reference there. And there was more that needed to be uncovered, and sort of more that needed to be dealt with in a clinical way. And EMDR has been just a roller coaster, but it's been amazing. I can sit here and I've finished that course, and I do genuinely, it has made a massive difference.
And yeah, I can only reciprocate and echo that, because I finished my round of EMDR probably last month, I think it was now, and it's just like, as you say, it just changes the way that you feel about specific situations and experiences, and as you say, it is very tiring as well. It's obviously quite intrusive.
I didn't realise it was going to be, because first of all, EMDR, for anyone that doesn't know, is called eye movement
desensitization reprocessing,
right? And you basically use you can lots of different things. You can have dots moving, so you move your eyes, or you can have tapping each leg, or like squeezing each hand, or sounds going each side. And it's basically trying to like connect the two halves of your brain or something, and then you can start allowing emotions to come through. And I had this explained to me, and I was like, what the hell? That doesn't make sense, right? But honestly, you go through it, and it's like starts just allowing. The way I describe it is, if you imagine you had a splinter in your hand, right, and it just sits there and you can't get it out, it's really tight in there. EMDR just relaxes the skin, so when you then try and push it out, it comes out. And so it's not necessarily taking any of the emotions away, but it's like relaxing your brain, allowing your brain to just release more of the experiences and memories than normally it would. So it does work.
Yeah.
I went into it being like, this is magic, Lucy, my counsellor, and it was amazing.
Yeah. And so in my first couple of sessions when we did it, she started to explain, how it worked, and especially so it's kind of specialised for post-traumatic stress disorder. And they basically say that trauma is essentially this raw emotional event that you can't, because it's so kind of raw and emotional and traumatic, that you can't store it as a memory. It's so whenever it kind of comes up, it is still there as that raw emotion, and that's why people have flashbacks and feelings of re-experiencing what had happened. But what EMDR does, so it mimics the part of our sleep, REM sleep, to then allow you, which is the part of our sleep that allows us to process the emotion and store it as a memory, but it does it while you're awake. So you're obviously accessing that part of your brain while awake, doing the eye movements and reciting the trauma, so that you can then emotionally process it and store it as a memory. It's still there, like you still remember it. It is just like less intense.
Yeah, 100%. And you can just sit with the emotions a little bit more, because I don't know about you, and obviously, so the reason I started all of this was because of a single very, very traumatic event of my brother dying, and unfortunately I was there, and it was just a horrifically awful thing to deal with, and I was only 17. It was nasty. So I mean, I was charged with trauma, and I guess immediately afterwards I had such telltale signs of quite significant post-traumatic stress. But what happens is, when you go through, and I'm sure you'll relate to this as well, I'm sure a lot of people do, is when you go through that initial period that's like, oh, a bad thing's happened, and you sort of get 6 months, a year out, everyone sort of starts moving on, and you start moving on with your life, and you sort of, a lot of people you can just label it as sort of, oh, that was a bad thing that happened, but it's a year ago, right? Yeah. And actually, those sorts of experiences, they don't, a year, 3 years,
go away,
years, 15 years, 30 years, they still, a little seed of them still remains. And until you get that moment where you can really sit in a safe environment with someone you trust and go for it, start creating that REM sleep, stuff, and move your eyes, and so you can have that experience, then you can't really unlock those emotions that still need for helping. I think so many people deal with this as well. When they have a bad thing happen, time goes past, and then they almost feel guilty about not being okay, because, well, it's time, right? Time heals everything. Yeah. It doesn't for a lot of people, especially post-traumatic stress, where, like you say, it hasn't formed into a problem memory because it's still a hot object, and you need to be able to cool that down before you can just file it away.
I like that.
Yeah. So it's amazing, but I think with recovery, there's no timeline to it, and there shouldn't be an expectation of how long it takes for someone to start it either. Because it's almost 6 years ago since I started a lot Sam, and I'm only really working out what's gone on, what's happened in my brain now, because it's the only time I've managed to actually be comfortable enough to talk about it to myself.
So that's kind of the one important thing I was going to say, is that you have to be ready for it. So then you can kind of ask someone to go therapy and go and process those kind of experiences. But if they're not ready to, if they're not receptive to it, then the therapy will not work nearly as well. So there's a really important part of, you can't force someone to go to therapy.
No, exactly.
It's not something that you can just say, I'll go and do it. You almost have to know to be ready for it, and actually sometimes being ready for it is being in a bad place.
Yeah, and this is why mental health is such a difficult sector to suddenly fix, because with anything else, and some people use the comparison between mental illness and a broken leg, and I really don't like this. And I know we've spoken about it before, because a broken leg, right? First of all, anyone with a broken leg wants it to be fixed. Realise that they need to be fixed, and it's quite understandable like how it gets fixed.
It's evident, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can see it basically.
Exactly, and that's quite like understandable how you do it. But also there's like that understanding of you need to. It's broken. With mental health, there is a lot of people that are struggling. It can be very, very difficult to understand. Firstly, how you're going to recover, how you're going to get treatment, but also the willingness to do it. It's an incredibly difficult jump to make from I need help to I'm going to get help. And that's a massive boundary, and that's why it makes it so difficult to actually, get support for people. It's just this extra barrier, and also that just feeds into this, and it's fed from this stigma of like, you can do it on your own, and this stoicism thing, and in this country of being like, oh, just go and talk to a friend over a cup of tea. And you're like, yeah, have a conversation with someone. But at the end of the conversation, there needs to be an
action. There's more to it.
Do you want me to book you an appointment with your GP?
Yeah.
Oh, we've got a situation in the UK where GPs often can't refer because there's no referral spaces. So I'm like, the first, one of the big hurdles we need to cross is trying to get more people to be willing to make that crossing between I want help and I'm going to try. Got to start getting a bit of a plan of like what needs to happen next, because that's a huge challenge.
And I think that's a really key point to pick up on as well, is that people kind of have instantly refer to kind of mental health, and I've seen it a lot, and I think this is the trouble in terms of corporates getting involved with it, and that they instantly think kind of mental health is to do with mental illness and conditions, and I think the only way that I like to liken mental health to physical health is that it can be good or bad. And people are so focused on mental health being a negative and being like, oh, they're struggling, or there's a problem, or that they've got a challenge or a difficulty, when actually like good mental health is, and this is what I bang on so much about, is that like when you're mentally healthy, you are more focused, you have better motivation, you have better attention, you've got more confidence. Like there are so many things that having good mental health can benefit in everyday life. Whereas like everyone likes to focus on, mental health is just about it being negative and when you need help and when to ask for help. And again, it's like going for walks and going for a run is not always going to be the answer. Like sometimes there does need, when you are stuck in things or you don't really understand why you're feeling a certain type of way, that's where therapy can really help. And I think that's where the stigma and stereotype has come from, is that people just think therapy is about when you're struggling.
100%. I think, and I've made this mistake, and I fall back into it a lot of the time as well, of using mental health to refer to depression, anxiety, or the bad stuff. But and you hear it often with people that work in the NHS or the police, where they'll say, oh, this person has mental health, and you're like,
everyone does. Everyone does.
But so do you. And it's what they mean is they have a mental illness. But also what I find mad about mental health is the fact that we just call it mental illness. Like as if we could just say, oh, Pete has a physical illness, and people would understand what you're like.
People understand what you're talking about.
I mean, let's list a few things you could have that's physical illness. You could have the flu, you could have COVID, blasphemy. You could have broken leg, you could have kidney disease, you could have heart failure, you could have a brain aneurysm. I mean, there's just we'd never lump all of that together and just be like, physical health, or he has a physical illness. So why we've done exactly the same with mental health, where you would just say he has a mental illness, right? It doesn't mean anything, and
actually it adds to the stigma as well.
It does,
it completely
because it's such an enormous thing. And also when you talk about mental health, we've got so many different conversations with that. Like you rightly say, good mental health is amazing. It can help you in every part of your life. It determines how you look at life and how amazing life can be for you. You've got sort of negative mental health that's not an illness, so breakups or going through stuff like that. Your health's taken a knock, right? Doesn't mean you're ill. Or you've got the more severe side, which is when people develop actual diagnosable conditions. There's this whole spectrum, and I think we as soon as we refer to it as just mental health or mental illness, especially in the bad way, we just completely
blanket
this whole massive, intricate spectrum of where people lie. I think a better way to refer to all of this, and a better way to sort of redefine our relationship with mental health is actually asking questions and presenting it as what makes your brain unique.
Yeah.
Because my brain, I'm really good at things, but I'm really bad at other things. And I find some things easy and some things challenging. That doesn't mean I'm unhealthy or well. That just is who I am. It's an identity, right? And I think, you know, I can sit here and talk about some of the ways that my brain's unique to yours and to other people. And it doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
And the same way that I can talk about how my body's unique from other people. It doesn't make it bad or good. You know, everyone has a very unique brain and a very unique mind and a very unique way of looking.
What makes us human, ultimately, really, isn't it? Like, if
we
we're all just like on a production line, being like cardboard copies of each other, then there would be very little diversity. There would be very little kind of basically differences, and ultimately, I think rather than focusing on those differences as a problem, we should actually kind of celebrate and embrace, but also really kind of carefully allow others to understand. And I think a lot of where the stigma has come up as well is the misunderstanding. And again, if it's being taught as people think, oh, they have. I've heard it so many times that people, they have mental health. And it's like, they might have an illness or condition, but everyone has mental health. That statement in itself is wrong, like in every kind of way. So it's like, the more people that are educated and understanding of the topic, the more open conversations can be, the more understanding people will be, more empathetic, more compassionate. Yeah. And ultimately, that is only ever going to break down the stigma and help others to speak up and speak out.
Absolutely. And I think as well, like, I think it would be very sad if our goal in mental health awareness and in all of this was to just stop the negative stuff happening.
Yeah.
We've got to go further than that. And I think, you know, what makes me sad is you look at some of these studies that show level of happiness, and it's down from pre-COVID, it's down from 10 years ago. It just seems to be receding. And that's sad, because that should be our focus. It's life satisfaction and happiness scores, and we want that to be through the roof, because people deserve to be happy. They don't just deserve not to be ill. They deserve to be happy. So I think, you know, as much as it's important to talk about NHS and treatment and getting people talking about the bad stuff, like, we should absolutely be heroing the good stuff, and that, you know, whatever that is for you. But I think the biggest thing as well is mental health is for everyone, and it's not the 1 in 4 that you hear all the time. It's 4 in 4, and 4 in 4 need to care. And just my big thing is, like, just learn about your brain. That's what I've done counselling for a long time now, and the biggest takeaway that I've got from it is not what she's told me. It's just what I've sort of learned about myself. And there's these light bulb moments of like, oh, that's why I do that, or that's why I think that. That's why my brain works. And then suddenly I can go into different, you know, like, things that happen in my life, and my initial reaction isn't frustration or anger or anything. It's like, oh,
It's understanding.
Yeah, it's my brain doing that again.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. And I think my biggest thing would be, like, go and investigate what it is for yours, right? Go and work out how your, like, brain works, how it thinks, and work out what makes it happy. For me, running, absolutely love running. And my biggest thing is, whenever anyone says, oh, I love running for my mental health, or going to the gym for my mental health, I'm like, you love it if you can take the watch off and not track it and still love it. So I love running. When I want to run for my mental health, I'll leave the watch at home and just run to smile and look around, rather than run to a pace or a time.
And that's kind of, it's funny you say that, because, like, when I was massively into sport and playing football and stuff, like, it was always about how fast can I run it, like, how far can I run, how fast can I run it. But, like, the one reason why I've now stuck to my gym routine and going to the gym 4 or 5 times a week isn't because I want to look better, or isn't because I want to get stronger. It is purely because I know that to have myself in a peak physical condition helps with my mental health, and that has, and there's a positive byproduct of kind of increasing muscle mass, increasing strength, and that, I think, is where people give up with the gym, or just can't be bothered to go anymore, because they're thinking, like, I just want to look a bit better, or I just want to lose a bit of weight. But actually, it's totally about kind of being mobile and like being able to, like, we're humans, we're not meant to be just sat at our desks hunched over for 8 hours a day. Like, that's not how we've evolved, and that's not how we should be kind of directing everyone to be.
Definitely. And also really bad for your mental health. You know, like just chasing numbers on a page is all we do anyway, right? That's like how the world works, is like money and chasing the next number. And it's just like, and followers and likes and all this. For me, it's like if something is good for your mental health, then you don't have a metric associated with it. You just do it to feel good. 100%. And it's the same with like people that say, oh, I love art for my mental health. And I find it sad when it then becomes like a business, and everything they do becomes like a side hustle. And I'm like, fine, I'm sure it makes you happy, but if you're doing something for your mental health, keep an element of it pure, and non-competitive, and just focus on why you love it. And I read an amazing book called Born to Run. It's what got me into running properly, and it has this whole thing about like human beings are born to run. Like our Achilles is the size it is because it's a damper for our bones and keeps us able to recover as we run huge distance, hundreds of miles. And it's all about ultramarathon running. But its whole thing is strip it all back to the basics, and don't run like on calculated paces and all of this. Just run to a level that you feel happy at or
comfortable.
So the way I do it is I run to the point where I can look around, notice things and smile. And if I can do that, then I'm running at a sustainable pace. But like, it's not rocket science, and I love it.
And that's listening,
exploring.
That's listening to your own body and your own mind, rather than having an external indicator like a watch or a timer to kind of keep you going. Basically, if you're doing it for your own satisfaction, for your own benefit, you are far more likely to stick with it and enjoy it than if you are just like, as I say, trying to chase a time down or anything like that.
If you do it and feel worse, it's not good.
you're not gonna continue doing it.
There'll be times where I like running and I like being competitive as well. So there'll be times where I time it and do all that, and you have some horrific runs like that. And I haven't been running for a while. I was talking about it with you earlier because I had an awful run. And I'm like, I don't want to get my trainers back on. But I think people need to just strip back what they love and try and make it as uncompetitive, or try and create an element of it which is just uncompetitive and able to just enjoy it.
Yeah, I think
you know, you speak to so many people and you hear about like they love the gym or anything, and their goals are not mental health. I know from a study that I think only 29% of people in a study actually said that over the next 3 years their mental health is their priority. And I'm like, but like we've just said, if you focus on your mental health and you do things that you enjoy, your physical health is almost certainly going to improve as well, because things that improve your mental health, sleep, eating, diet, exercise, also improve your physical health. So, and also it's going to improve your work. So 29% of people said they prioritize their mental health over the next 3 years. If you can then be one of those 29% of people, then you're already ahead of the rest, ahead of almost 70%, 71% of people, because your physical health, your motivation, your health, general health, your mental health, it's all going to improve. And I think that's what we're missing. People see the target and see the sort of, I go to the gym to be able to lift whatever.
They're results driven, aren't they?
Yeah,
they are end goal outcome driven rather than. And I think a lot of people are guilty of this just in life, is that they're constantly chasing that next promotion or that next wage rise, and they forget to enjoy the journey. Yeah. And that's kind of what mental health is all about, is being present and enjoying the moment and enjoying the journey. And then the outcome will feel just as more sweet.
100%.
Because and I think that's why my mental health began to deteriorate initially, because I was constantly trying to chase something that wasn't coming quick enough or wasn't happening how I wanted it to. And I was growing. Oh, wow.
Hello.
We've got two stags just calling. It's the beauty, and that's the beauty of it, isn't it? That is being.
I love Richmond Park so much. That's so cool. He's huge. Sorry, anyway, you were interrupted by the deer.
I don't mind it. But anyway, yeah. So it's less about the outcome and more about what makes you feel good, what makes you feel like you enjoy life. That's really the harnessing of it, isn't it? Like you don't do things that you don't enjoy, because ultimately that is just going to make you miserable.
Oh, absolutely. There's an amazing book as well called Ikigai, It's based on this Japanese or East Asian philosophy of ikigai, where every human being has a one true purpose. And it comes in if you imagine like a Venn diagram, which has all the overlapping circles. If you have each circle is like what you're good at, what you enjoy, what you can get money for, and all you think. And right in the middle, there's your ikigai, which in this
do everything,
philosophy, they believe everyone genuinely has one that is their absolute purpose. And that's the big thing here as well. Is like, I think actually when I've seen from talking to people that are struggling or sort of getting a vibe for what people are struggling with at the moment, purpose is brought up there as like one of the biggest drivers. This constant, and we do live in a world where there's this constant pressure to have shit sorted out. And just to know what you're doing.
That is a lot of social media pressure as well. I think you just like the algorithms just promote people that are doing well or are seen to be successful. Whether what that means and what that looks like for everyone is different. But if you are consistently being slammed down the throat with like people who it makes you feel worse about yourself, because whether you're consciously or subconsciously comparing yourself, there is still that comparison. And you feel like you think you're connected to this person's life, but like you're just seeing it through a screen. You don't really know who they are. You don't really know. They might be an awful person. Like they genuinely might be the worst person on earth. And then a lot of the time they're not enjoying it.
It's a horrible one. I know from not necessarily talking to Sam, but seeing like what was on his phone afterwards. There was a lot of that comparison of not really knowing what he was doing, not really knowing where he was going, not really knowing like whether he was good enough at it. And even the stuff he was good at, it can quite quickly become toxic when you start comparing yourself that you're better. I mean, the hardest lesson in life is knowing that you're probably not going to be the best at anything. Like I know I'm not going to be the best at anything, and I've gotten myself in a position where I'm absolutely fine at being mediocre at a lot of things. Like,
I think that's what a lot of people are scared. A lot of people are scared of being mediocre, and I'm sorry, but like the average human, like a lot of people are that.
Only one person's going to be the best, right?
What is it? The 0.1% are the ones that you are promoted and seen on social media, and I don't. If that isn't going to negatively impact your mental health because you're constantly striving to try and achieve what they have, you're never going to be satisfied with the life that you live.
Definitely. And with running, for example, like I'm not a great runner, but I've sort of I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I just love it, right? And I think as well with my job, I'm like, I don't want to be the next Tony Robbins, like selling out the O2 and all this. Like I'm not going to be that, but I can still be good enough to be satisfied with it and I enjoy it. And also I think we live in a world which is very materialistic and very goals driven and very title driven. Well, I'm like, actually what we lose by focusing on that is the experience, the value from experience, and the value of just going through it and meeting people like you. And like, and it's difficult because you fall in the trap. And with my job, I'm like constantly trying to think about like where I go next and what I do and what the goal is. But as soon as you start doing that, you forget that.
You could, I mean, it's important. It's important to obviously have that thought process. But what you need to be aware of is if it starts to dominate and starts to drive what you want to do. Because obviously, if you then are just focused on what's next, where do I go, then you get caught up in again of not enjoying the moment, not being present, and I think that's where we lose our authenticity. I think that's where we're no longer acting in the self that we are meant to be and what we should be, but we're acting as if like that's what I could be. And that's where it can get kind of dangerous if that becomes too overwhelming.
And as soon as that's the phrase, I could have been this, I could have done this, immediately then you start to create that tunnel vision where you start to only see failure. And then, I mean, what's the phrase? Oh, what's the phrase that's amazing about this? It's like if you only see stripes, everything looks like a zebra or something. I probably put it.
I see what you mean.
Zebra. There's a great phrase. That's not the phrase, but it's something similar.
If that's all,
if you're only starting to see, I could have done this, or I could have done this, and a lot of people think that way. Then you're only going to see things as I'm not quite good enough to be better than I am, or like all of this. It's really bad. And also this leads on to like an actual point all of this leads to an actual point here, and I think it's that one of the biggest lessons I've learned and the hardest things I've had to try and do is really understand how I can check in with myself and notice when I'm doing things that are bad. And it's like, we talk a lot about like mental health and stuff, but actually understanding and noticing when you're not doing something well or for your mental health is really hard.
It is really
because
difficult.
you don't think about it like that.
Yeah.
You don't think about it like that. You're like, you've come up with excuses and you persuade your brain that you're doing it for the right reasons. So that's why, you know, I set really obvious things. If I go for a run and I'm really concerned about my pace, I know my brain's not in a good way and needs a bit of a check-in, right? Because I know actually what I really enjoy is just having a look at the birds, right? Or listening to the planes in Richmond Park as we're doing now. And if I'm not doing that, then there's a need to check in and understand why I'm doing that. And I think really it's like what the biggest learning curve I've had is understanding my brain and then knowing when things aren't how they usually are, to be like, why is that? Maybe I'm tired. If I'm tired, what can I think of that would have made me tired? Rather than being like, I haven't worked hard, why am I tired, why am I exhausted, and getting annoyed at yourself. Really being able to sit and think and understand your thoughts and sort of map where they've come from. I also read recently that they surveyed loads of people, I can't remember who did it, surveyed loads of people, and they basically gave them an option of receiving an electric shock or being left alone in the quiet with their thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's something ridiculous, like
8 or 9 out of 10 will say that they'd rather be an electric shock than spend time alone in their room. And I think this is all about being comfortable with your own thoughts and being self-aware enough to recognise them. And I think a really important part of that is like the majority of the time, we would not speak to other people the way that we speak to ourselves in our own head. And I think that just shows, okay, you've got expectations for yourself and you have different drives and motivations. But some of the things I catch myself saying to myself in my own head is like, you would not say that out loud to someone, ever. And I think that is just like that's just the telltale sign where maybe you do really need to start checking in. Maybe you really do need to start discovering what might be going on underneath the surface. And I think this is a massive thing in terms of especially alcohol drinking in society, is that a lot of people, and I used to think I was just drinking alcohol because I was having fun, but actually I was just drinking alcohol because I needed to avoid going any deeper into what was troubling me. And it's a good enough distraction and a good enough suppression. But ultimately, if you continue to do that, alcohol is a depressant at the end of the day, and it's only ever going to make you feel worse. Like, we wake up with a hangover and we've just normalised hangovers, but actually that makes you feel horrible. Like, actually, and you get that anxiety afterwards as well. I've definitely noticed that I have periods of depression if I've drunk a lot recently. Like, it's been so ingrained in our society and so normalised, but actually the fact of the matter is, it has absolutely zero benefit for your mental or physical health.
That's such a good way of putting it. And this is where it becomes difficult, because I'd love to just throw away the ties to alcohol, because I mean, like you said, there's zero benefit, and we all tell ourselves that there is benefit. Because it gets socialised. And like, well,
you don't need.
It was still a choice at the bar.
Exactly.
Right? Like, it was still. I could have had a J2O. That's my go-to sober drink. J2O. And you have that choice still, and I think it's classic. Your brain just being like, oh no, it's okay. I've got this handled. It's all good. I'm doing it for the right reasons. I had a good night last night. It was worth it. And then you start looking at the bill as well.
The amount of money
quid or whatever.
Exactly.
It racks up quite quickly. But no, it's such a classic one of the brain.
And as I say, it's like, just ingrained in our society and been so normalised. And like the strangest thing is that, like, on the flip side, if you really think about it, people find it strange when you don't drink. We should start finding it strange when people are drinking, because sometimes that can mean that there are underlying issues. Doesn't always have to mean that. Don't get me wrong. Like, I can just have a drink, but do you need it? Is it actually doing anything of benefit to you and where you want to be or what you want to be doing? And as you say as well, the cost of it is just obscene. Like, you could easily go out and spend 80, 90 quid on a night out. And if you do that every weekend, it's like 400 quid for the month.
Rent.
Exactly.
Like, well, not in London.
No,
Yeah. It's absolutely mad. I love that about, like, when else would it be you'd be the weirdo for not taking a drug? You're like, what?
Exactly.
But you are. And I remember I feel really bad because I started uni. I was first year of uni, and I remember there was a girl, Jess, who was on our floor, and she was so fun, great. She was absolutely brilliant. She was such a laugh. But she didn't drink. And I remember my first reaction when they started saying that, I was like, that's so weird. Like, you almost feel like you don't trust
When you're
them.
younger
Like,
as well, it's like
that's
there's such a drinking
so
culture.
bizarre.
to
Yeah,
then
yeah,
become
yeah.
18, especially at university, and like,
Let's go
to-
wild.
yeah.
But it's, I mean, I think far often than is reported is it's just masking for something. And if I get to socialise as the excuse for why alcohol is good for you,
then dig a bit deeper into why.
Actually, I don't know, is it just actually maybe a mask for anxiety, or is it a mask for the fact that you, I don't know, don't particularly relate to your friends? I don't feel like you need to be around them. But anyway, I think the absolutely important thing here is just understanding that thing again, what makes your life and your brain and your body unique to everyone else. And if you can really understand that and start mapping that, then you can get a bit of an idea of what you like, what you don't like, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and what actually you need to do more of going forward and less of going forward. But because people are so desensitized to mental health and really don't venture very deep inside their brain at all, we don't have those conversations with ourselves about, actually, do I enjoy this? Like, do I really, is this like something I want?
Does it serve me?
My life?
And that's a real kind of question I've certainly started to ask myself with things like alcohol, is that, like, what purpose is it serving me? What is it actually doing to benefit my life and to get me to where I want to be? And once you start asking yourself those questions and start saying, like, it doesn't, there isn't, you're like, well, why do you do it then?
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? It's absolutely bizarre. And there's so many things like that. I mean, it's the same with the gym, and this massive pressure, especially within men, to just jack up in the gym.
Yeah.
And you're like, and it starts to feed back to you, and then you start having those same questions again of, I'm not good enough, and all of this. It's, oh, what a world.
The vicious cycle.
Yeah. But it's, look, I think we talk about mental health, and it can become a very complex conversation. It can become very complex to understand. But actually, really, it's very, very simple. You are your own unique human being. You've got to understand how you function in the world, how you look at the world, really try and subjectively see what that is, and then do more of the things you like that are good for you, and do less of the things that are bad and are bad for you. It's really that simple. And obviously, unfortunately, things happen in life that are going to develop into really bad things, and you might face mental illness, you might face actual issues with the neurotransmitters in your head or experience in your head, and that is a separate conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
But that, we can...
You can prevent that from happening by being proactive about caring for your mental health, though, especially.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like if you were to go drive a car, right? And the more positive habits you can build going forward, the more safety features you build into the car. So if you have a car accident, all these things might not help you at all. You might still be in a very bad way, but they just give you that extra bit of a safety margin, right?
Yeah.
Because I do feel people's just frustration sometimes when they hear people talk about mental health and being like, I have my kale smoothie every morning, or I go for my morning run. You're like, well, when I was depressed, like, I didn't want to open the curtains,
get out of bed.
Let's not talk about walking as the answer to everything. But I do think that the more positive stuff we can normalise in society and the normal conversations you have, the better. But I go back to my job and what I do. Like, we cannot live in a society where currently the threshold for receiving CAMS treatment is evidence of 3 suicide attempts.
That's actually,
what the hell?
It's atrocious.
That's like having an oncology ward, a cancer ward, saying we're not going to see you because we need evidence of 3 seizures, and your brain tumour's not big enough for treatment here. Like, it's just makes me sick to think that there are children out there that are desperate for treatment and actually having to wait for 3 suicide attempts
and I
before
think
they receive it.
Yeah, the scariest thing in that as well, and obviously us two working in suicide prevention as well, is that being proactive and prevention is all about stopping them from getting to that stage in the first place. And it becomes far more dangerous, and I'm not going to say like irreversible, but less less capable of recovering quicker if they attempt suicide. Like if there is an attempted suicide, you now possess the number one risk factor for attempting again. And they're asking them to do it at least twice or three times.
But with the evidence of
not asking them, sorry.
No,
but I mean, essentially,
you need evidence.
Yeah.
It's like going to a bloody court case.
Yeah.
It's a doctor's surgery. It's really, really sad. And I put it to an MP once, like this whole thing, and I was talking to them, and I was like, and it was a government MP, is in the government, and I was just like, this is the state of evidence of 3 suicide attempts for CAMS. CAMS waiting list is beyond anything we've ever seen before. People are leaving CAMS faster than they've ever left before. And just completely deadpan, they go, but CAMS was never designed for any of this. You're right. I know it wasn't. It wasn't designed, but it is dealing with it. So let's have the conversation.
Let's not just ignore the fact that
you are literally. We've got a service that was never, and I do understand that it was never designed to deal with any of what it's dealing with at the moment. It was designed for a huge minority of selective cases that were treated by them, but it's not that. It's actually picking up a lot of the
and these cases are preventable. Like and these things, when you do start providing, as you say, in social services, it could be financial planning, it could be like there are so many things that we can target that could help, or a preventative measure for anything worse happening, or anything from escalating. And I think that's what's being neglected. And I don't know, I really don't know what it will take for them to genuinely take it seriously.
I know. And we try. I mean, like what was it? The campaign I ran in 2018 when got to Downing Street, and it was just like a smile for the photo, and then you don't hear anything for 5 years, and it's just like that's the level of progress you've got here. But also, Dr. Julie Smith, the psychologist on TikTok and Instagram.
I follow her.
She had an amazing reel once, an amazing analogy where she was just like, too often we're treating people that have a mental illness or are struggling in life, and treating their symptoms and treating the depression or treating what they're going through.
But they're not going to the root cause.
It's a bit like having a disgusting fish tank and taking the fish out, cleaning the water, and then not changing anything about the habits or the environment. And it just becomes disgusting within 3 months.
Again,
And then the fish is unwell again, right? And I think, especially with the mental health service, especially our approach to it at the moment, because of the lack of resources, means we can only focus on cleaning that water every so often. But the real sustainable change comes by fitting a filter, or like starting to do more, or like, I don't know, getting a cleaner fish, or like doing real things and looking at someone's depression or their struggles not as one thing, but as like a symptom of an entire environment that they're living in. And until we treat the environment, then we're not actually going to create sustainable change in many people's lives. And the only people that I've heard of that really make massive strides in their recovery really are quite honest about the things the hard decisions they need to make about changes in their life. Like you've just said, like really focusing on what needs to change. And sometimes the changes are really hard to do. It's cutting off relationships with people. It's actually reflecting and being like, I don't enjoy doing this or this. And it's often really difficult environmental changes that are what's needed. But unfortunately, we've got such little capacity that we're just treating depression. That's why we're prescribing more antidepressants than ever. And there is certainly a place for
putting a plaster on a...
There is certainly a place for antidepressants and medication.
100%,
But it shouldn't be at the cost of looking deeply at environment and treating these struggles holistically.
And I think essentially, what you're saying, and this is what I've been saying for a little while now, especially in suicide and suicide prevention, is that it largely it's not been improved. We haven't started reducing the statistics because people see it as an individual problem, and they say it's like they've got that problem, they can solve it themselves. It's a societal problem. There is some way, in some way, society has failed that person for them to think or feel as though that is their only option out, and or they're feeling a way that they've now got depression, they've got anxiety, they've got PTSD from situations. That's what society has suppressed on them, and I just that's where the attitudes need to change and the understanding needs to change, is that you don't just let someone do that on their own. That's an entire kind of societal, that is a community, that is a friendship group, that is a family that come round together and support each other.
Yeah. For a society, we're not very social, are we? With each other. I've just come from central London to come here, and you'd sit on the tube and you're like, my God, we're not a community at all, are we? We're just a group of people that are forced to live near each other.
Exactly, and we're under we've just been given under the illusion of, especially social media, that we're all far more connected, and Zoom and things like that. There is no emotional connection there. No. There is no human interaction. I follow people on my Instagram that I don't talk to. I know what they're doing in their life, but that's not even what they're doing in their life, because half the time it's a highlights reel, half the time it's just what they want you to see. I don't actually know who they are now or what they're doing. So it's just like, again, as I say, it's like an illusion. You're just you think you're connected. We think we're so much more connected, but actually what is completely lacking, and I think is a massive problem in society, and why mental illness and conditions and suicide is prevalent, is because of the lack of human interaction, the genuine emotional connection, the compassion that we feel. We're each other's neighbours, like we are, and we have always been social creatures. Like we have always had to rely on one another to get through things, and I think it's just separating us a bit more, and it's just segregating, and it's isolating. And you think as I said, you think you're in touch with someone because you're looking at their story or looking at their posts. Yeah. But it's like you're so far removed from what is actually going on.
Well, it doesn't give you even the slightest bit of actual satisfaction as a talking to a human being. So right now we're releasing dopamine, serotonin, and all these really fun things, but for the right reasons, right? On social media, releasing them for the wrong reasons.
Yeah,
they release dopamine because you've got a like. Yeah. They release it because you've got this, and you're like, there's no competition. There's no like, this is only good. Like talking about this and talking into a real human. But I think with social media, it just becomes this really, at least in your brain, it's just all these emotions. Yeah, really bad.
Yeah.
Really bad.
Well, it's just been an incredible chat, Ben. Thank you so much. It's just been wonderful, and I think I can speak for definitely Tanya and I to say that, especially working in this place, to have someone that is so kind of understanding, it is just really refreshing. And you just, I think all I can say is you just get it. You do just understand, and you have that level of empathy and compassion, and you do really care about helping others and trying to sort out the mess that this country is in.
Yeah.
To finish, we like to, if there is one particular mindfulness technique that you employ that you think others would also enjoy, what would that be?
I do love actually a few things, right? Just to tick off some. Firstly, to go back to what I've been saying through the whole podcast, run, but leave the watch at home and just look around and run to a pace where you can look around and notice things and be able to smile. And if you can smile and look at things and notice that, oh, that's a cool bird, then you're running at a pace that's comfortable and sustainable, and you'll love it. And always set the goal, if you're going for those sorts of runs, of coming back to feel better. And if you feel worse and you've done something wrong, and reflect on what you've done wrong, then I'd say I do love a bit of meditation. I'm really bad at it.
Yeah, likewise.
I find it so hard. My brain is naturally an incredibly busy place. But just really focusing on like noticing how my body feels. So, and I know it's something with the MDR, right? It's like how your body feels. Yeah, it's like, oh, my shoulders are really tight. I'm going to make an effort to relax them. You don't have to do it like on a bloody yoga mat. You can do it on the tube. Like work out, oh, my shoulders are tight. Oh, I'm really tensing my core. Why am I doing that? I'm just going to release my core. Or I'm breathing in my, top of my lungs. I'm going to lower where I'm breathing to sort of lower body. And just sort of that's my mindfulness, like meditation version of like, I'm just going to start breathing, doing any of that. But I'm a bit of I'm a genre fluid, as it were. I love a bit of everything.
Yeah. And find what works for you. Find what works for you is the most important thing. Like what, and as we've said throughout this episode, like the uniqueness of our mind and our bodies, like what one person will enjoy, the other person may not.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
It is, Thank you so much, Ben. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you. It's been great. Also, what a stunning.
Yeah, what a nice setting.
Love it.
And thank you all for watching and listening. And we'll see you next time on Sully's Open Conversation. Goodbye.
Bye.